Christmas at Red Butte by L.M. Montgomery, Part 5. "What be? Didn't I tell you that Santa Claus would come all right?" shouted the delighted Jimmy. "Oh, what splendid fate!" The twins hugged their dolls in silent rapture. But Aunt Elizabeth's face was the best of all. Then, the dinner had to be prepared, and everybody had a hand in that. Just as Theodora, after a grave peep into the oven, had announced that the turkey was done, a sleigh dashed around the house. Theodora flew to answer the knock at the door, and there stood Mr. Lurgan and a big, bewhiskered, fur-coated fellow, whom Theodora recognized as the stranger she had found on the trail. But was he a stranger? There was something oddly familiar in those merry brown eyes. Theodora felt herself growing dizzy. "Donald!" she gasped. "Oh, Donald!" And then she was in the big fellow's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. Donald it was indeed. And then followed a half an hour during which everybody talked at once, and the turkey would have been burnt to a crisp had it not been for the presence of mind of Mr. Lurgan, who, being the least excited of them all, took it out of the oven and set it on the back of the stove. "Think that it was you last night! I never dreamed it!" exclaimed Theodora. "Oh, Donald, if I hadn't gone to town!" "I'd have frozen to death, I'm afraid," said Donald soberly. "I got into Spencer on the last train last night. I felt that I must come right out. Couldn't wait till morning. But there wasn't a team to be got for love or money. It was Christmas Eve, and all the livery rigs were out. So I came on horseback. Just by that bluff, something frightened my horse. He shied violently. I was half asleep and thinking of my little sister, and I went off like a shot. I suppose I struck my head against a tree. Anyway, I knew nothing more until I came to in Mr. Lurgan's kitchen. I wasn't much hurt, feeling none the worse of it, except for a sore head and shoulder, but, oh, gift of God, how you've grown! I can't realize that you're the little sister I left 4 years ago. I suppose you have been thinking I was dead." "Yes, and oh, Donald, where have you been?" "Well, I went way up north with a prospecting party. We had a tough time. The first year, I can tell you, some of us never came back. We weren't in a country where post offices were lying round loose either, you see. And at last, just as we were about to give up in despair, we struck it rich. I've brought a snug little pile home with me, and things are going to look up in this log house, gift of God. There'll be no more worrying for your dear people over mortgages." "I'm so glad, for Auntie's sake," said Theodora with shining eyes. "But oh, Donald, it's best of all just to have you back. I'm so perfectly happy that I don't know what to do or say." "Well, I think you might have dinner," said Jimmy in an injured tone. "The turkey's getting stone cold and I'm most starving. I just can't stand it another minute." So, with a laugh, they all sat down to the table and ate the merriest Christmas dinner the little log house had ever known. End of story. So, how do you feel about the ending? Well, it wraps up quite nicely, doesn't it? Everyone's happy at the moment, and the future happiness is promised. So, going back to something that Jimmy said on the very first day, in part 1, Jimmy says, "When I'm 16, because he was talking about Theodora being so very grown up, being 16 and all. And he said, well, when I'm 16, I'm going to work, and I'm going to pay the mortgage, and I'm going to basically provide for the family and see to my mom and her needs." And Theodora said, "I hope you do. I hope you do become a good man like that." And Montgomery does not make the little family wait for Jimmy to grow up to realize this happiness. Instead, she brings Donald home. Who is Donald? It is Theodora's brother who went to the Klondike for the gold rush. And this is kind of playing into that, fantasy versus reality element that we were talking about before, where Donald not only survived when they believed he was dead, but he actually struck it rich. And now he is coming home, a wealthy man, willing to provide the financial stability that this family needs. And not only financial stability, but he will likely serve as their male protector and advocate, which was very important back then for women who were vulnerable on the prairie. So, in a sense, Donald completes their family. And we resonate with this idea of what was lost is now found, or what was broken is now fixed. And there's this deep sense of satisfaction in the ending of the story, even if it is kind of has this fantastic, too good to be true element about it. Sometimes that happens when you're a little kid and a toy breaks and an adult is able to fix it, and you look at it like it is a miracle and you go, whoa, never thought this toy would be fixed. And look, here it is. And sometimes that happens to us as adults in adult life. Something wonderful will jolt us out of our jaded reality and we will say, wow, this is a gift of God. This is something that is a godsend to us and our family. And Christmas is a wonderful time of year to be thinking about that kind of thing. So obviously the ending might veer too far onto the sweet side for some readers. Are you one of them? Or do you like these wrapped up with a bow endings? They make you feel like the world is restored to goodness and people's hearts are restored to peace. And that is a good feeling for you. So I know for me, I know that this is an L.M. Montgomery story and it is going to warm my heart. And that's kind of what I was expecting. And it's what I received. And so I'm satisfied. At the end of reading a story, I like to ask, so what? So why does this story matter? And again, I think this story draws a contrast between gifts, the gifts that we give and receive at Christmas, the objects, the material things, and gifts of God. So Theodora was willing to sacrifice something very dear to her, the locket, in order to give gifts to her family. And in return, she received a true gift of God in her brother's return. So Theodora was able to put things in perspective. She thought, I could give up this object that reminds me of my brother that he gave to me as a gift. And then in return, I can get the gift of giving a Christmas to my nieces and nephews. But she got far more than that in the return of her brother, which is the gift of God. Because even when Donald promises money and security, Theodora says it's best of all just to have you back. And so she keeps her heart in the right place, and that it is the gifts of God and not the material things that matter most. And I love that theme, especially for this time of year. So you let me know what struck you most about this story, what you enjoyed. And thank you so much for listening.